Something has gotten in. The news cycle, the difficult person, the unjust situation, the accusation you cannot fully dismiss, and it is living in you now, occupying space in your mind that you did not choose to give it. You are thinking about it when you do not want to be thinking about it. You are reacting in ways that the thing does not deserve. The external event has become an internal resident, and the internal resident is running your day more than you are. This is the experience that Marcus Aurelius addressed more directly, more practically, and with greater personal authority than almost any other philosopher who has ever written about the life of the mind. Not from theory, from the experience of a man who was, for nearly 2 decades, the most powerful person in the known world, and who found in that position that the most important battles were the ones happening inside him. He called it the inner citadel, the fortress of the rational mind, the hegemonikon, the governing faculty that is, in his Stoic understanding, the one thing that cannot be taken by external force. The body can be constrained, the reputation can be destroyed, the position can be stripped away, the people you love can be taken. But the way the mind responds to all of this, the quality of the assent it gives or withholds, the judgments it makes about what has happened and what it means, this remains yours, not by default, by practice, by the specific, daily, unglamorous work of maintaining the citadel. There is a specific loss of sovereignty that most people have become so accustomed to that they no longer notice it as a loss. The morning mood shaped by the first thing the phone delivered, the emotional register of the workday determined by the tone of the first email, the evening undone by a comment made in passing that should not have had the power it had. The inner life, the quality of attention, the emotional tone, the fundamental orientation of the mind, continuously colonized by whatever the external environment most recently produced. This is not weakness. It is the default condition of the unexamined life operating in a world that has been engineered to exploit it. The attention economy, the news cycle, the social media feedback loop, all of these are designed to insert themselves into the inner citadel and take up residence, and they are extraordinarily effective. The average person's inner life is, for much of the day, less a sovereign territory than an occupied one. Marcus Aurelius wrote the Meditations, addressed to himself, never intended for publication, the private philosophical journal of the emperor trying to maintain his interior sovereignty while governing an empire at war, in exactly this condition. Not from the quiet of the philosopher's study, from the front lines of the Marcomannic Wars, from the imperial court at Rome, from the constant pressure of the most demanding executive position in the world. He was writing the Meditations in order to keep the citadel from falling. They are the record of the daily battle, and they are, as a result, the most practically useful Stoic text available. We have visited Marcus Aurelius in earlier episodes, the philosophy of releasing what you cannot control, the morning practice. What this episode focuses on is the specific architectural concept that runs through the Meditations as its organizing image, the inner citadel, the hegemonikon, the governing faculty of the rational mind that is, in the Stoic understanding, the one thing that cannot be taken by external force. The body can be constrained, the reputation can be destroyed, the position can be stripped away, the people you love can be taken. But the way the mind responds to all of this, the quality of the assent it gives or withholds, the judgments it makes about what has happened and what it means, this remains yours, not by default, by practice, by the specific, daily, unglamorous work of maintaining the citadel. Marcus Aurelius Antonius Augustus was born in 121 AD in Rome, into a prominent senatorial family. He was educated by the best tutors available in the empire, in rhetoric, in law, in philosophy. He came under the influence of Epictetus's teachings, read in the notes of Arrian, and through them absorbed the Stoic philosophy that would organize his interior life. He was adopted as heir to the Emperor Antoninus Pius at 18, became co-emperor at 39 when Antoninus died, and ruled as sole emperor or in partnership with his adoptive brother Lucius Verus until his death in 180 AD. His reign was one of the most difficult in the Antonine dynasty. The Antonine Plague, probably smallpox, swept through the empire beginning in 165 AD and killed millions over 15 years. The Marcomannic Wars on the northern frontier required Marcus to spend much of his reign in military camps along the Danube rather than in Rome. He dealt with the attempted usurpation of Avidius Cassius, the deaths of several of his children, the challenge of preparing his son Commodus, who proved entirely unfit to succeed him. The Meditations were written during this period, in Greek, not Latin, the language of philosophy rather than administration, in the first person, addressed to himself. The repeated returns to the same themes, to the shortness of time, to the indifference of fame, to the practice of the present moment, to the citadel, are not the sign of a wandering mind. They are the sign of a person who knows which lessons he most needs to keep learning and who keeps teaching them to himself.
The inner citadel, the concept and the practice. The Stoics held that the rational faculty, the hegemonikon, the governing or directing mind, is the seat of human freedom, precisely because it is the only thing that is genuinely up to us. Epictetus, who was teaching Marcus absorbed, organized the entire Stoic philosophy around this distinction. Some things are up to us, some things are not. The hegemonikon, the judgments it makes, the assents it gives, the way it interprets and responds to what happens is up to us. The body, the reputation, the external circumstances are not fully up to us. The wisdom is in knowing the difference and organizing the life accordingly. He built on this foundation the specific spatial image of the citadel, the rational mind as a fortress, the judgments and assents as the gate, the external events, the provocations, the insults, the difficulties, the losses, as forces that can only enter if the gate is opened. And the gate is opened by the assent, by the judgment that what happened is intolerable, that it deserves the emotional reaction it is producing, that the external event has the power to determine the internal state. He writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The strength is not the elimination of the external events. Marcus did not have the power to stop the plague or the wars or the deaths of his children. The strength is the maintenance of the citadel against those events, the refusal to allow them to determine the quality of the interior life, the practiced ability to say to each difficult thing, "This is external, the citadel stands." The practice of the citadel is not one of cold indifference. Marcus is clear that grief is appropriate, that the person who does not grieve their losses is not stronger but diminished. The practice is the distinction between the event and the judgment about the event. The plague killed his children. That is the external event. The judgment that this makes the universe malicious, that the work of the day is therefore worthless, that the interior life should be dominated by this grief rather than organized around the continuing practice of virtue. This judgment is the gate being opened, and the gate does not have to be opened. He also introduces the concept of the reserve clause, hupex hairesis. He always acts with the addition, if nothing prevents it. He pursues his intentions and projects with full commitment and with the interior reservation that he cannot fully control outcomes. This is not defeatism. It is the Stoic practice of distinguishing between commitment and attachment. The commitment is full. The attachment, the staking of the inner citadel's condition on the outcome, is deliberately withheld. The outcome may be good or bad. The citadel remains.
Now, the bridge. Because Marcus was a second-century Roman emperor working within the specific framework of Stoic philosophy in the specific context of imperial Rome, and most people watching this video are not governing empires. But here is what has not changed. The thing that got in this morning, the news that is living in you, the comment that has been replaying, the unjust situation that is occupying interior space that belongs to the work of the day. the emotional residue of last week's difficult encounter that is still shaping how you approach this week's encounters. These are Marcus's battles wearing modern clothes. And the citadel he was maintaining, against the plague, against the wars, against the deaths of children, is the same citadel you are maintaining against the email that arrived at the wrong moment and the meeting that went sideways and the background anxiety about the things you cannot control. The practice he describes is not the suppression of response. He does not say, "Do not feel." He says, "Do not allow the feeling to become the judge of the situation, the occupier of the interior, the thing that runs the day. Feel it, acknowledge it, and then return to the hegemonikon, to the governing faculty that can look at what happened and make a genuine judgment rather than a reactive one. The citadel is not the absence of the battle. It is the presence of the person who can observe the battle without becoming the battle."
Here is what Marcus Aurelius on the inner citadel asks of you, practically, today. First, identify what is currently occupying the citadel without permission. The external event that has become an internal resident. The thing you are thinking about when you do not want to be thinking about it. The news story, the difficult person, the unresolved situation that is occupying interior space more than its actual significance warrants. Name it. Then apply the Marcus test. Is this within my power or outside my power? The event itself, outside. How I respond to the event, what judgment I make about it, whether I allow it to determine the quality of my interior life today, within my power. The naming of the distinction is the beginning of the citadel practice, not the resolution of the problem, the reclaiming of the interior space from the thing that has been occupying it without genuine title. Second, practice the reserve clause. In one project, one plan, one intention you are pursuing today, practice the hubex hairesis. Commit fully, and then add, as an interior note rather than a defeat, if nothing prevents it. The commitment does not diminish with the reservation. The reservation prevents the staking of the citadel's condition on the outcome. You will do your best work on this. You will not make the quality of your interior life contingent on whether the work produces the result you intend. This is not passivity. Marcus governed an empire at war using this practice. It is the specific discipline of the person who acts with full commitment and does not allow the outcome to determine whether the inner fortress holds. Third, return to the present when the citadel is breached. When the thing you are not thinking about gets in, when the reactive response arrives faster than the governing faculty, practice the Marcus return. Not the suppression of the reaction, the noticing of it. The moment of, I am having this reaction, I am not this reaction. The small but available gap between the event and the response in which the hegemonikon can briefly reassert itself. This gap is the practice. Marcus writes about it again and again across the Meditations, the momentary pause in which the reactive animal self is observed by the rational self, and the rational self chooses the response rather than producing the reaction. The gap is small, the practice is developing it. One instance today of the pause between the provocation and the response, one moment of returning to the citadel before acting from outside it.
Fourth, use the view from above. Marcus's most specific imaginative practice. When something presses from the outside, when the news, the difficult person, the unjust situation feels overwhelming, expand the frame. Step back from the immediate and see it from a greater altitude. The quarrel that feels enormous seen from inside it and small seen from the perspective of the year. The insult that feels unbearable today and forgotten in 10 years. The political crisis that feels unprecedented and that, in the long view of history, is one of many. This is not the dismissal of the difficulty. It is the recalibration of the frame from which the difficulty is being evaluated.
Marcus writes, "How small a part of the boundless and unfathomable time is assigned to each of us." The view from above does not make the problem disappear. It restores the proportion that the interior occupation tends to destroy, and proportion is the Citadel's first defense. I want to close with the image that is most consistent across the meditations, not the Citadel itself. The emperor at the writing table, somewhere on the Danube frontier, at the end of a day that has brought the news of another outbreak of plague, another incursion on the border, another report of the son who will not be adequate to the role he will inherit. He picks up the pen. He does not write to history, he writes to himself, the person who needs to be reminded, again, that the things that have entered the Citadel today without permission can be returned to the outside, that the governing faculty is still present, that the practice is to begin again tomorrow and to use what today has taught about where the walls are thin. He was not always successful. The meditations are not the record of a person who had mastered the Citadel. They are the record of a person who kept working on it, who kept returning to the same themes because the same themes kept failing him, who wrote what he needed to hear because writing it was the practice of hearing it. The Citadel is not built once, it is maintained daily in the specific, unglamorous, private practice of the person who keeps choosing against the constant pressure of the external world and the constant reactivity of the inner animal to govern from the hegemonikon rather than from the occupied territory that the day keeps trying to produce. The pen is in your hand. The fortress is still standing. What does it need today?
Here is the question Marcus Aurelius leaves us with today. Not from the imperial throne, from the writing table, from the private practice of a man who had everything the world could give and found that what he most needed was something the world could not give and also could not take. What has gotten into the Citadel today without your permission? And what does the governing faculty, your governing faculty, actually think about it when it observes the event from the inside of the fortress rather than from inside the reaction the event produced? The gate is yours. It has always been yours. Marcus spent 19 years as emperor reminding himself of this every morning. Leave that in the comments, because naming what has gotten in and noticing the difference between the event and your judgment of the event is the beginning of the practice, the Citadel practice, the oldest and most available practice in the Stoic tradition. The fortress stands. Return to it. I'll see you in the next one.